I want to tell you about the night that changed the direction of my life. Not dramatically, not with explosions or revelations or the kind of cinematic crisis that announces itself with music. The quiet kind of change. The kind that happens at midnight in a small house in a Seattle neighborhood when everything is dark and still, and you have been awake for 3 hours listening to the rain and wondering whether the job you almost did not take was going to cost you something you did not know you had. I was paid to stay overnight. That was the job. A professional overnight caregiving assignment, 6 nights post-surgical, the kind of arrangement that a home health agency places when a patient needs monitoring but does not need hospitalization. I had done these assignments before. They were good money and the work was important and I was good at it. But I had almost not taken this one. And the reason I had almost not taken it was the same reason that everything that happened afterward was complicated and necessary and in the end, the most important thing that ever happened to me. My name is Jesse. I was 26 years old. And the man in the house on Finney Ridge was named Marcus Cole. He was 34. He had just had surgery on his right knee, a full reconstruction, the same surgery that took athletes out for a year. The same surgery that required careful recovery and the kind of nighttime monitoring that family could not always provide. Marcus Cole had no family in Seattle. He had a house and a job and the specific self-sufficiency of someone who had built their life around not requiring other people. And he had done it well enough that when the surgery happened, and the surgeon said you will need overnight care for the first week and the agency called me, Marcus Cole had hesitated for 4 days before agreeing. I know this because he told me on the first night. He told me because he was the kind of person who explained himself when he thought an explanation was owed. And he thought an explanation was owed for the specific quality of his welcome, which was polite and complete, and conveyed without a single word of hostility, the fact that having someone in his house overnight was not his preference. I want you to know, he said from the couch where he was propped with his leg elevated on 2 pillows, that I appreciate you being here, and that I am not a natural at this. At what? I said. Having someone in my space, he said, needing someone in my space. I had heard versions of this many times. The self-sufficient patient, the person who had built a life around managing alone and was now temporarily in a situation that required conceding the management. I understand, I said. I'll do my job and try not to impose. He looked at me. Dark eyes behind the tiredness of someone who had been through a surgery that morning and was now in the specific uncomfortable twilight of the first post-surgical evening. His hair was longer than most of my patients, natural, close, with the specific texture of someone who wore it that way by choice rather than habit. He was lean in the way that active people are lean, the kind of build that the surgical notes confirmed: marathon runner, recreational rock climber. The body of someone who had spent considerable time in relationship with their physical self before a knee problem had interrupted that relationship. He looked at me and the look was assessing, not unkind, the look of a careful person evaluating a new variable. Thank you, he said, simply. Get some sleep, I said, I'll be here. He closed his eyes. I settled into the chair I had positioned in the corner of the living room where I could see him and hear him and be present without being intrusive. I had a book. I had water. I had the specific practiced readiness of someone who had learned to be awake at 3 in the morning without it feeling like an imposition on the night. I looked at Marcus Cole sleeping on his couch. And I felt the first edge of the thing I had been afraid of when the agency called. The thing that had made me almost not take the job. The agency coordinator had called on a Monday. Her name was Diane and she had been placing me for 2 years and she knew my file and she knew, therefore, the thing in my file that was relevant to this specific assignment. Jesse, she said, I have a 6-night post-surgical assignment, knee reconstruction, single patient, male, 34, no family in the area, the house is on Finney Ridge, good neighborhood, the patient is a landscape architect. Okay, I said. There's something I want to flag, she said. The patient, Marcus Cole, is also a former client of the agency, not caregiving. He used our companion service 2 years ago briefly for his father who was in Seattle for a medical procedure. Okay, I said again. He's aware of your file, she said. He specifically requested a male caregiver. He's aware you're gay as it's in your professional profile and he wanted you to know that he mentioned it because, she paused. He's gay too, and he thought the shared context might make the overnight arrangement more comfortable for both parties. I held the phone. This was the thing that required thought. Not because of any professional concern. My sexual orientation had never interfered with my professional practice and had no reason to now. But because the specific combination of an overnight assignment with a gay male patient who had specifically requested a gay male caregiver introduced a social complexity that I preferred to be honest with myself about before accepting an assignment. The complexity was not about him, it was about me. I had been single for 14 months. Not by choice and not by circumstance, but by the specific fatigue of someone who had spent their 20s loving people who did not love them back in the same way, and had made the specific decision, a year ago, to be alone until the idea of not being alone was appealing again rather than terrifying. It was not yet appealing again. And taking an overnight assignment with a gay patient who had requested me specifically felt, when I examined it honestly, like the kind of situation I should be clear-eyed about before I walked into it. Is there a professional issue? Diane asked. No, I said, give me 24 hours. I called my best friend Rosa. The agency wants to place me on an overnight assignment, I said. Post-surgical, single patient, gay male, mid-30s. What's the hesitation? Rosa said. I'm worried about. I stopped. About what? She said. About my own objectivity, I said. About walking into a house for 6 nights with someone who is. I stopped again. Who is what? Rosa said. Who is alone, I said, and who has specifically requested me and who I will be with overnight for 6 nights, and Jessie. Rosa said. What? You are a professional, she said. You have been doing this for 2 years, you have excellent boundaries and excellent judgment, and you have never compromised a professional situation in your life. I know, I said. Then take the job, she said. You are not so delicate that you cannot do your job because the patient is a gay man. That's not. Jessie, her voice, the specific tone of a best friend who has known you long enough to call you on the thing you are not saying. What are you actually afraid of? I sat with the question. That I will like him, I said, and that liking him will compromise something, either the professional relationship or myself. Those are different concerns, she said. I know. One of them is a professional ethics question, she said. The other one is you being afraid of your own feelings again. I held the phone. Take the job, she said, be a professional, and if you like him, feel that after the job is done. I called Deanne the next morning. I'll take it, I said. The first 2 nights were professional, exactly as they should have been. I arrived at 7 in the evening. I did the medical check, vitals, pain assessment, medication administration per the surgical discharge instructions. I made sure Marcus had eaten and had water and had everything he needed within reach. I settled into the chair, I monitored, I was present without being intrusive. Marcus slept poorly the first night, post-surgical pain and the specific disorientation of being in his own house in an unfamiliar configuration, leg elevated, unable to move with the freedom his body was accustomed to. He woke twice. I was there. I adjusted his ice pack, checked his comfort, ensured the pain was manageable. He said very little in those moments. He was not a person who filled silence with words. He woke, registered that I was present, and returned to sleep with the specific trust of someone who has accepted that help is available and is allowing himself to use it. The second night was quieter, his sleep improved. My presence became less novel. The specific accommodation of 2 people sharing a space was beginning, in the small practical ways it always begins. I learned things about the house that told me things about the person. It was modest in scale. A craftsman bungalow on Finney Ridge with the specific bones of a Seattle house from the 20s that had been well-maintained rather than over-renovated. The kitchen had been updated carefully, with materials that matched the house's character. The living room had books, real accumulation, the kind that tells you a person actually reads. Plants healthy and well-tended, which told me something about the daily attention of someone who watered regularly and noticed. One wall of the living room was covered in architectural drawings framed, the kind that were both functional records and aesthetic objects. His work, the landscape architecture he had mentioned in Diane's call. On the third night he was more alert. The surgical pain was settling into the more manageable chronic ache of early recovery. He sat up more, he ate dinner in the living room rather than being carried a plate. He watched me move around his kitchen with the assessing look. "You've done this a long time," he said. "2 years," I said. "I'm trained as a nursing assistant. This is a specialty I chose." "Why?" he said. Not challenging, genuinely curious. The question of someone who collects information about people through asking. "Because the overnight hours are when people are most themselves," I said. "They're not performing for the day, they're just there, and being there with them matters." He looked at me for a moment. "That's an unusual reason," he said. "I'm an unusual person," I said. The almost smile, the first time I had seen it. Something in my chest. I filed it the way I had promised myself I would. Under things that belong after the job. Seattle in October does not offer dramatic weather. It offers persistent weather. The specific commitment of a Pacific Northwest autumn, rain that is not torrential but is constant, a gray sky that is not threatening but is permanent, the city existing under water in the specific beautiful resigned way that Seattle exists. The third night I was awake at midnight. Not because Marcus needed me. He was sleeping better than the first 2 nights, the recovery settling into its rhythm. I was awake because I had finished my book and the rain on the windows was the kind of sound that keeps certain people awake, and I was, at 1 a.m, one of those people. I sat in my chair and I listened to the rain and I looked at the room. The architectural drawings on the wall. I had been looking at them for 3 nights without really looking. At 1 a.m, with the rain and the quiet and the specific attentiveness of someone who has nothing else to attend to, I looked. They were remarkable. Not the technical drawings, those were present too, the plans and sections of his professional work. The other ones, the hand drawings, the site sketches, the quick gestural studies of plants and grades and the relationship between landforms and the built things placed on them. The drawings of someone who understood that a landscape was not a background, that the ground a building sat on was as designed as the building itself, that the relationship between a garden and the sky above it was a spatial decision as much as a planting one. I looked at the drawings for a long time. "They're mostly abandoned projects," said a voice from the couch. I turned. Marcus was awake. Not distressed, awake with the specific quality of someone who had been lying with their eyes open thinking and had decided to speak. "I'm sorry," I said, "I didn't mean to stare." "You weren't staring," he said, "you were looking, there's a difference." I turned back to the drawings. "The one in the middle," I said, "the terraced garden, what happened to it?" He was quiet for a moment. "The client ran out of money," he said. "Before the second phase, the terracing was done, the planting never happened." "Where is it?" "Mercer Island," he said. "There's a house sitting in the middle of a beautifully graded landform with nothing growing on it, someone else's plants eventually." A pause, not what was designed. I looked at the drawing. The terracing drawn in the specific quick confident lines of someone who sees grades and topography the way other people see furniture arrangement. The planting indicated in soft pencil, the kind of indication that says here is where the life would go. "I'm sorry about that," I said. "It happens," he said. "Not every project gets to be what it's designed to be." I looked at him. He was looking at the ceiling, the specific quality of someone who has been awake for a while thinking about something that is not the ceiling. "Marcus," I said. "Yeah." "What are you thinking about?" A pause. "Whether I'll run again," he said, "after this." I held this. The marathon runner, the rock climber, the person whose relationship with their physical self had been built over years and was now interrupted by a reconstruction that required 9 to 12 months of rebuilding. "You will," I said. "You don't know that," he said. "No," I said, "but the surgeon's notes say the reconstruction went well and your fitness baseline is excellent and the recovery prognosis is positive." I paused. "I read the discharge documentation thoroughly, it's my job." He looked at me then. The dark eyes in the midnight room with the rain outside. "Do you always read the documentation that thoroughly?" he said. "Always," I said. Something in his face. Not the assessing look, something else. I filed it. We talked for an hour, not about the knee or the surgery or the recovery timeline, about the drawings on the wall and the abandoned terraced garden and the specific way that landscape architecture was different from building architecture because the material was alive and changed every season and was never finished in the way a building was finished. He talked about his work the way people talk about things they love. And I listened the way I listened, when something genuinely interested me, which was not always the case and was in this case completely the case. At 2 in the morning he said he should sleep, and I said yes you should, and he closed his eyes and I sat in my chair and I looked at the drawings and I thought about the filing system I had put in place before this job and whether it was holding. It was holding, but the walls were thinner than they had been on Monday, and there were still 3 nights to go. He was more mobile by the 4th night. The crutches were in use. He could navigate the short distances of his bungalow with the specific careful efficiency of someone learning the new geography of their own body. The couch-to-bathroom route was established. The couch-to-kitchen route was being attempted with the specific determination of a person for whom dependence was uncomfortable. I was there for the attempting. Not hovering, present in the way my training had taught me, close enough to intervene if needed, far enough to give the person the dignity of trying. The specific balance of care that respected the patient's agency while maintaining the safety the situation required. He made it to the kitchen. He stood at his own kitchen counter for the first time in 4 days with the specific expression of someone who has just negotiated something small that was not small at all. "Coffee," he said. "I can make it," I said. "I can make coffee," he said, with the mild firmness of someone establishing a boundary. "Okay," I said. He made coffee. It took longer than it would have taken him a week ago. He had to work around the crutches and around the elevated positioning and around the specific logistics of a kitchen designed for a person who could stand on both feet equally. He did it, without asking for help, without conceding the task. He brought me a cup without asking whether I wanted one. I held the cup. "Thank you," I said. "You've been awake all night 3 nights in a row," he said. "You need coffee." He sat at the kitchen table with the crutches leaned against the counter and his leg in the modified position that the post-surgical instructions specified, and he wrapped both hands around his own cup, the way people wrap their hands around cups when the cup is providing something more than temperature. We drank coffee in his kitchen in the early morning. The rain was still doing what Seattle rain did in October. The kitchen light was warm against it. "Tell me something," he said. "What kind of something?" I said. "Any kind," he said. "You've been listening to me for 3 nights. I'd like to hear you for a change." I looked at my coffee. "I almost didn't take this assignment," I said, the honest thing, the thing I had been filing along with everything else. He looked at me. "Why?" he said. "Because Diane told me you'd requested a gay male caregiver specifically," I said, "and I wanted to be sure I could be professional about the assignment before I accepted it." He was quiet for a moment. "Were you worried about me?" he said, "that I had ulterior?" "No," I said, "I was worried about myself." He held his cup. "About what specifically?" he said. "About my own objectivity," I said. "About coming into a house for 6 nights with someone who is," I stopped. "Who is what?" he said. The question Rosa had asked. "Alone," I said, in a way I recognize. He looked at me. "Long enough for the rain outside and the kitchen light and the specific quality of a morning that is also still night." "How long?" he said. 14 months, I said. He nodded. 11 years, he said. I looked at him. "Since I was 23, he said, he stopped. "I've been building a life around not requiring people since I was 23, I got good at it." "What happened at 23, I asked. He held his coffee. "My partner left," he said, "not badly, not dramatically, the specific quiet ending of something that had been 2 people growing in incompatible directions." He looked at his cup. "And I decided that the cost of that kind of loss was not one I was prepared to keep paying, so I stopped building things that could be lost." I held this. "That's a long time," I said. "It is," he said. "Did it work?" I asked. He looked at me. "Until recently," he said, "it worked fine until recently." The kitchen, the rain, the coffee. I filed the recently. The filing was getting harder. The 5th night the rain stopped. Seattle without rain in October is a different city. Quieter in one way, louder in another. The absence of the constant background rhythm made the house itself more present, the creak of old wood, the specific sound of the craftsmen settling, the neighborhood audible in ways the rain had muffled. Marcus was awake when I arrived. Not just awake, up, Sitting at the kitchen table with a sketchbook and a pencil, drawing with the specific absorbed quality that I had come to recognize as his deepest mode. The mode I had seen him approach in our conversations when he talked about his work. The one where the professional self and the personal self were not separable. I did the evening check, vitals, pain assessment, medication. He submitted to this with the specific practiced patience of someone who has accepted the routine and is cooperative with it without being passive. When it was done, he went back to the sketchbook. I sat across the table. I looked at what he was drawing. He noticed. He turned the sketchbook toward me. It was the abandoned terraced garden, but differently drawn from the framed version on the wall. Not the technical plan, the experiential drawing, the view from within the space. The terraces as they would have been experienced standing at the lowest point looking up. The planting that had never been installed indicated in the drawing, grasses and sedges, and the specific Pacific Northwest understory that was his habitat. You're drawing what it would have been, I said. I draw it sometimes, he said. When things don't go as planned, I draw what they would have been. Why, I said. He looked at the drawing. Because the vision existed, he said. Even if the execution didn't happen, the vision is real, drawing it is, he stopped. Is what, I said. Is honoring the intention, he said, even when the material didn't follow. I looked at the drawing. The terraces, the imagined planting, the vision that had existed and had not been built. I know something about that, I said. He looked at me. Tell me, he said. And I told him. About the relationship at 24 that I had believed in completely. That had been real and had been good and had ended with the specific quiet of two people who had loved each other and had not been able to make the love fit the lives. About the 14 months since. About the filing system I had built. About Rosa telling me I was afraid of my own feelings. He listened the way he listened, with full attention, without filling the spaces. When I finished, he looked at the sketchbook. The vision existed, he said. Yes, I said. And the execution didn't follow, he said. No. That doesn't make the vision wrong, he said. It makes the specific execution wrong. The vision, he looked at me. The vision sounds right. I held his gaze. Jesse, he said. Yeah. I want to ask you something and I need you to tell me if it's inappropriate, he said, given the professional context. Ask, I said. After this week, he said, when the assignment is done, would you, he stopped, started again with the specific careful quality of someone for whom imprecision is uncomfortable. I would like to see you again, after the assignment is over, not in this context, in a different one. The kitchen table, the sketchbook, the fifth night. Marcus, I said. I know the professional complexity, he said. I am not asking you to compromise anything, I am asking about after. After, I said. Yes, he said. I looked at him across the kitchen table with the rain-stopped Seattle night outside and the sketchbook between us and the vision he had drawn of something that had not been built. One more night, I said, let's finish the job correctly, and then yes, after. He held my gaze. After, he said. After, I said. And we went back to the evening's routine, the medication, the positioning, the careful professional completion of the work that the night required. But something had been named. Not acted on, named. And the naming was its own kind of building. The last night. I arrived at 7 as I had arrived every evening. The check was thorough, his recovery was progressing well, the surgical notes to be relayed to his surgeon at the follow-up appointment were positive, the 6-night period of overnight monitoring had been, medically, a success. We were both aware that it was the last night. Not with awkwardness, with the specific quality of two people who have been in a temporary configuration and are both present in the last evening of it, aware of its ending without being made anxious by what comes after. He cooked dinner. Or mostly cooked dinner. He managed the standing portions from a stool and I managed the things that required mobility, and the collaboration was easy in the way that things are easy between two people who have learned each other's rhythms over a week of close quarters. We ate at the kitchen table. He had made jollof rice, his grandmother's recipe, he told me. Nigerian grandmother, Seattle grandfather, the combination that had produced the specific Marcus Cole who sat across from me with the sketchbook closed beside his plate and the crutches leaned against the counter. The food was extraordinary. The specific warmth of a dish that is made from memory and inheritance that carries the person who taught it in every grain. Your grandmother taught you, I said. She taught me everything worth knowing, he said, including that the most important thing about a meal is that it is made for someone. He looked at me when he said it. I held the look. We finished dinner, we did the evening routine, the last one, the completion of the professional week. Vitals, medication, the discharge notes for the surgeon. I filed the paperwork. He sat on his couch, not lying down, sitting, with his leg elevated on the pillow he had positioned himself and the book he had been reading for the past 3 evenings open in his lap. At midnight I heard him put the book down. Jesse, he said. I looked up from my chair. Come sit on the couch, he said. I looked at him. The job is technically done, he said. The paperwork is filed. The last medication was at 10. What remains is 6 hours until morning. A pause. Come sit on the couch. I closed my own book. I crossed the living room. I sat on the couch. Not close enough to be intrusive, close enough to be present. The specific negotiation of two people establishing a new proximity. He looked at the drawings on the wall. I want to show you something, he said. He reached into the space beside the couch cushion and produced the sketchbook. He opened it to a page near the back. He handed it to me. I looked at what was on the page. It was a sketch of a person, in a chair, in the corner of a room. The chair positioned to see the room and a figure on the couch and the window and the rain beyond it. The sketch was quick, gestural, the kind of drawing done from observation rather than planning. The kind drawn when the thing being observed was happening and the hand had to move quickly to catch it. The person in the chair was me. You drew me, I said. Third night, he said, when you were reading, you didn't notice. I looked at the drawing. The specific gesture of the figure in the chair, book open, body angled toward the couch. The posture of someone who was simultaneously absorbed in their reading and aware of the room, present without performing presence. He had seen this, he had drawn it. Why, I said. Because the vision existed, he said. The phrase from the fifth night, the drawing of the abandoned garden, the honoring of the intention even when the material did not follow. I looked at him. Marcus, I said. Yeah. The job is done, I said. Yes, he said. And what comes after, I said. Starts now, he said, if you want it to. I handed the sketchbook back to him. He took it. And in the space where the sketchbook had been between us there was nothing. No professional document, no medical form, no care plan or discharge note or medication log. Just the space between two people. Which I crossed. Not dramatically, not with declaration. I moved closer. He put the sketchbook down. And we sat on his couch in his craftsman bungalow on Finney Ridge at midnight on the last night of the assignment, with the rain starting again outside, and the drawings on the wall and the jollof rice warming in the kitchen, and I felt the specific quality of something I had been afraid of for 14 months becoming the thing I had needed all along. Not fear, not the managed distance of someone who has been filing things away. Simply present in the right place with the right person. At the right time. We stayed on that couch until the morning, not sleeping, talking, about the 11 years and the 14 months in the abandoned terrace garden and the drawing he had made on the third night, about his grandmother's jollof rice and the marathon he was going to run when the knee was healed, and the planting that was going to happen eventually in the terrace garden because he had gone back to the client and proposed a modified scope and they had said yes, and the planting was scheduled for spring. About the small, ordinary, extraordinary things that two people talk about when they are in the early hours of knowing each other, and every piece of information is interesting and nothing needs to be managed or filed. At 6 in the morning the light came through the east window of the living room and landed on the drawings on the wall and I thought about what he had said. That the vision exists even when the execution doesn't follow. That the vision is real. That drawing it is honoring the intention. And I thought, I have been filing the vision for 14 months. I have been putting it under things that do not belong here yet, and it is still there. Every time I file it, it comes back. Because visions do not go away just because you are afraid of the material, and I was tired of being afraid of the material. I left at 7. Not because I wanted to leave. Because the professional completion of the assignment required that the overnight stay end at the appropriate hour and that the transition to whatever came after be handled with the same honesty that everything else had been handled with. I drove home to my apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. I sat on my couch. I called Rosa. The job is done, I said. And, she said, she had been waiting for this call, I could hear it. And the vision exists, I said. A pause. I'm going to need more than that, she said. I told her the fourth night conversation, the sketchbook, the fifth night and the after, the sixth night and the midnight and the drawing of me in the chair on the third night when I had not noticed. Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he drew you. Yes, I said. On the third night, she said. Yes. Jessie, she said, that man fell in love with you on the third night. We don't know that, I said. He drew you, she said, in his sketchbook, the way he draws the things he loves. A pause. I have known you for 8 years, I have watched you file things and manage things and be afraid of things. I am telling you with the authority of 8 years of knowing you, do not file this. I looked at my ceiling. I'm not filing it, I said. Good, she said. I don't know what I'm doing, I said, but I'm not filing it. Also good, she said, what are you doing? I'm going to call him, I said, when it's a reasonable hour. It's already a reasonable hour, she said, call him. November. Marcus's recovery was progressing with the specific determined efficiency of someone whose entire relationship with their body was built on the assumption that the body would respond to effort. He attended his physical therapy with the same focused attention he brought to his work. He followed the recovery protocol. He was patient with it in the specific way of someone for whom patience is a discipline rather than a natural quality. I was not his caregiver anymore. I was something else. Something that was finding its shape in the evenings and the weekends and the ordinary extraordinary time of two people who have been brought together by unusual circumstances, and are now discovering whether the unusual circumstances were the beginning of something real or a temporary configuration produced by proximity. It was real. I knew this before I could have articulated it, the way you know things that are true when you stop managing what you allow yourself to know. He knew the landscape of my interior the way a landscape architect knows a site, not from a single survey but from repeated visits, from the different conditions of different seasons, from the gradual accumulation of knowledge that comes from paying attention over time. He paid attention. Not in the performing way, not the relationship performance of someone managing an impression, the genuine way. The way he had been paying attention on the third night when I was reading and did not notice and he had drawn what he saw. December. We went to Mercer Island. He had not been back to the abandoned terraced garden since the project had ended. The planting was scheduled for spring and the site was currently what it had been, the beautifully graded landform with nothing growing on it, the bare terraces, the intention without the execution. We stood at the bottom of the terraces in the December afternoon. He looked at the grades, at the relationship between the levels, at the way the site sat in the landscape of the island looking west toward Seattle across the water. The planting is going to work, he said. The grades read well, the sun angle in March, he pointed at the western slope. That's going to be extraordinary with the right ground cover. What are you putting there? I said. Native grasses, he said, carrks, some ceanothus on the upper terrace for the bees. He looked at the site with the specific expression of someone who is seeing what will be rather than what is. Sword ferns on the shaded east face, and the lower terrace maybe salvia, maybe agastache, something for the hummingbirds. I looked at the bare grades. I tried to see what he saw. Show me, I said. He looked at me. What? Show me what you see, I said, walk me through it. He looked at the site. And he walked me through it, terrace by terrace, plant by plant. The specific vision of a space that had been designed 4 years ago and was finally, in this spring coming, going to become the thing it had always been intended to be. I listened. I looked at the grades and tried to see the planting. I could not see it the way he saw it. I did not have his eye, his training, his specific way of reading a landscape as a spatial experience rather than a surface. But I could see that he saw it. And watching someone see something clearly is its own form of seeing. Marcus, I said. Yeah. Thank you for bringing me here, I said. He looked at me. Thank you for wanting to come, he said. We stood on the terraces in the December afternoon with the water visible to the west and the city on the other side of it, and the bare grades around us full of his vision of what they would become. He took my hand. Not the midnight couch, not the cautious navigation of a professional transition. the fully inhabited, fully chosen, daily chosen hand. I held it March. The planting happened on a Saturday. Marcus could not help with the physical work, the knee was not yet cleared for the sustained bending and lifting that planting required. But he was there. He directed the planting crew with the specific clear guidance of someone who knows exactly what they want and communicates it without ambiguity. I was there. Not as a professional. As the person who had watched him draw the vision in a sketchbook and had stood on the bare terraces in December and had wanted, since that day, to see the intention become material. I planted. Not because I knew what I was doing, I had to be told where and how for every plant, but because the planting mattered to him and I wanted to be part of the things that mattered to him. By late afternoon, the lowest terrace was planted. The salvia and the agastache, the grasses at the edges. The ceanothus beginning to establish on the upper slope. The crew had gone, it was just us and the planted terraces and the March afternoon light coming in from the west off the water. Marcus stood at the bottom of the terraces and looked at what had been planted. His face. Not the professional assessment, not the landscape architect evaluating the execution against the plan. The other thing. The specific quality of someone looking at a vision that has, after years and false starts and the specific frustration of material that does not follow intention, finally become real. Marcus, I said. He looked at me. It worked, I said. He looked at the terraces. It's going to work, he said. It needs a season, maybe two. The grasses won't fill in until fall. The ceanothus, he stopped. Marcus, I said. He looked at me. It worked, I said again, meaning something more than the planting. He looked at me for a long moment. The March afternoon, the terraces, the planted vision. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I said. He reached out. He put his hand on my face. The specific gesture of someone who has been careful and is in this moment not being careful, not dramatically, not with declaration, simply present, his hand on my face, his eyes on mine. Jesse, he said. Yeah. I drew you on the third night, he said, because I saw something I wanted to keep. I know, I said. And I have been, he stopped. I have been building a life around not requiring people since I was 23, and I want you to know that requiring you does not feel the way I thought requiring someone would feel. How does it feel, I said. He looked at me. Like the vision becoming material, he said. I looked at him. This man who had been in his house for 6 nights and had drawn me without my knowing, and had asked about after with the specific careful precision of someone who does not ask for things casually, and had stood on the bare terraces in December and shown me what he saw when he looked at what others saw as empty grades. Nathan, I said. He smiled. Full, the complete smile that I had been cataloging since the third night when I had first seen the almost version of it. Marcus, he said. Marcus, I said, I took this job because my best friend told me I was afraid of my own feelings, and she was right, and I am less afraid now than I was in October, and I am less afraid every day. What are you afraid of, he said, still. I thought about it. That the execution won't follow the vision, I said. He looked at me. It will, he said. How do you know, I said. Because we're already in the second season, he said, and things are filling in. I laughed. He laughed. In the terraced garden in March with the planting done and the ceanothus beginning and the grasses that would fill in by fall and the water visible to the west and Seattle across it. The overnight job. The 6 nights. The filing system that had not held. The midnight that had changed the calculation. The vision that had become material. October, 1 year from the surgery. Marcus ran. Not the full marathon, not yet. The knee was cleared for a half. 13 miles through the Seattle neighborhoods he had been running for a decade before the reconstruction had interrupted the decade. I was at the finish line. Not because I had been asked to be, because the finish line was where I wanted to be when the thing that had been worked toward arrived. He crossed at 2 hours 14 minutes. Not his fastest, the knee was conservative on the downhills, the rebuilding year audible in the specific quality of his pace. But he crossed. He crossed with the specific expression of someone who has been told a thing is possible and has just proven it. He found me immediately. In a finish line of hundreds of finishers and their people, he found me the way he had found things in the terraced garden, by knowing where to look. He was exhausted and sweaty and grinning the grin that I had been watching develop since October of the previous year. The full one, the one that arrived completely. Well, he said. The left knee looked a little conservative on the Eastlake downhill, I said. He looked at me. I'm kidding, I said, you were extraordinary. He put his arms around me. The exhausted, finish line, completed thing arms of someone who has just done the hard thing and is in the specific relief of the other side of it. I held on. Jesse, he said. Yeah. I'm going to run the full one in spring, he said. I know, I said. Will you be at the finish line, he said. I held him. I'll be at the finish line, I said. The October Seattle finish line. The recovering knee, the vision that had become material, the overnight job that had not been just a job. The midnight that had changed the calculation. Which was, in the end, this, that the things worth having require the specific courage of showing up for them. Not just once, every day. With the same attention and the same honesty that a good landscape architect brings to a site, reading it as it is, seeing it as it could be, and doing the daily work of making the distance between those two things as small as possible. One night at a time. One terrace at a time. 1 mile at a time. Building.